If we could just hear one more round of applause for that remarkable movie. I just wanted to ask, because it's the logical question to ask after a film like that and being so immersed in not only your son's life, but in the life of a whole family and in the process of time. How is your son doing now? What is he up to? How did he react to the film?
So Owen sends his regards to one and all. He's doing great. This was a family affair that started actually a couple of years ago when Owen was around 19 and he had grown in awareness to a point where he said something to me and Cornelia, in essence, that people don't see me as I am. And, as he says now, I'm an unpolished gem. I'm a diamond in the rough. That, of course, is from Aladdin, in case you're wondering. And it started a discussion in our family that, maybe Owen beckoning us would mean we would do something different and start what ends up being our book. It's always what's best for Owen, always guided us. And I can say that this has been a great thing for him, because in a way, people do see him for who he is. He's quite fully realized here. He says, this is my real life. And we first saw it when we had it at Sundance, when we debuted at Sundance in January, the end of January. And Cornelia hadn't seen the movie, or Walter, till Sundance. This was a family decision. Because as Cornelia said with her deep wisdom, look, we know our life. The question is, will people see our life for what it is? And Owen for who he is. So she says, let's watch it with 600 strangers and see. And it was an extraordinary cathartic experience. And at the end, Roger Williams, the director, says, ladies and gentlemen, Owen Suskind. Owen bounds down on the stage. And people, just cheer themselves hoarse. And Walt follows him down. And of course, Walt, now you know Walt so well, he says, hey, Owie, take a bow. And Owen, having 1,000 bows in his head, that person chooses the Prince Charming bow, hand across the waist, 1 foot back, and of course people go crazy again. And he's fired up. He says, I am not a celebrity. I'm a person being celebrated. They're different. He's cautious about this. A lot of celebrities, he feels, are about them. He says, I'm not about me, I'm about everyone. But then he meets all these people who come up, and mostly he's happy because he's looking for a new girlfriend, and he's feeling like audiences.
I think the film will help. It has
helped, David?
It's helped movie stars in the past.
Esther and I have talked about this. He's, yeah.
Well, he's a handsome fella. And so the movie, on the one hand, is this, what's so moving about is its specificity. It's about one person in a particular, not a case, but a human being and an entire family. And on the other hand, it's about a theme.
Yeah.
It's about the passage of time and the realization for everyone involved that nothing stands still and things happen and people grow. So Ilene, you're here representing NYCA, which is not an individual, but both an institution and a potential institution. I wish you could address this theme of independence, because I think most people, when they think of autism, think of autistic children and their peculiarities and their specificities. And those of us who are parents with children with autism know that time doesn't stand still at all, and the challenges don't stand still either. Tell us a little bit about the theme that Ron's family is addressing here, independence and time, and what it means for NYCA.
So NYCA started about 14 years ago with Laura, my co-founder, who's in the audience. And the first thing we did was we started a school. And we started with young children. And as those children began to grow, we recognized that it wasn't just about going to school during the day, but what happened to them after school. And so we realized we needed to develop opportunities for kids with autism to learn to play, to connect with others, to have something to do after school like typical kids do. So we came to a place like this, the JCC, and we appealed to them and asked them to help us start a group called Boost, which is still running today that helps kids with autism learn how to socialize and communicate in a group setting. But what happens when the school bus stops coming? We need to help them learn how to transition from school to a job. So we created an employment program that does that.
And in this wealthiest of countries, how is the United States equipped for a burgeoning generation of young adults with autism who are presumably moving into the world and with parents who, I read in the newspaper, will not live forever? How is the United States equipped for that or not?
We are terribly equipped, and we can make a difference in that. So we look at programs that make that difference. For example, the employment program, we built off of an already existing employment program, Project Search, and we created an autism-specific curriculum. And in 5 years, Project Search helped us create employment opportunities and teach young adults how to work. And we have experienced approximately a 70% employment rate following graduation from this program. And once they get a job, and this is the hard part, it's not just getting a job, it's keeping a job. 92% of those young adults have retained their job.
Dr. Lord, one of the themes also in the film was a sense, because of the peculiarity and the mystery to some extent of autism, of the sense of isolation that a human being feels for whatever reason, for the kind of psychic noise that he or she is feeling. As someone grows older with autism, what do you feel is required most from for young adults and people who are becoming adults for the rest of their lives? What do they need, and what is lacking?
I think joy. I think opportunities to do something that gives you joy. And then I do think contact with other people. It may not be as much. It may be different. It may not be having long, heart-to-heart talks, but it may be sitting beside somebody or being in a house where other people are in the house, even if they're not in the same room. I think having something to do that accomplishes a purpose. And it doesn't have to be a dramatic purpose, but I think something. And I guess I'm still fairly overwhelmed with the film because I just felt like, for Owen, you capitalized on something that gave him joy. You were persistent, and he was persistent.
Ferocious.
Yeah, in, not giving up, but just being back there and back there and back there. And I think that that's the case whether an individual is not able to talk or all the way up to people that could talk far better than I can.
Ron.
So I love about this notion of community and the shared, because we had a revelation when we went to that first Disney Club meeting. Like, my God, there's a whole room of Owens here. And when they started to speak the shared language of Disney, it liberated everyone. It starts at 12 kids the first year, goes to 20, then 40 at Riverview School where he was in the Cape. and then there's 6 boy-girl couples in the room that all formed in Disney Club. And it's part of this idea of joy, community, whatever the fabric of that is. It's what we all want. And what we found is that they recognize someone else within community, which was, in a way, the beginning of Owen's increasingly independent life. And Owen is now living in supported independent living, so-called. That's life you saw there, with all of those support services. Everyone in there has a job. Even a few kids drive. A few kids not. Yeah, they're young adults, 20 to 40. And he has a place, a community.
How is it paid for, and how should it be paid for?
There's more and more support, in some states more than others. And a big part of what we're getting involved in activism is to get that number up from 38 or 40 to all the states, and actually full support. It's such a mission for the country. To have these kids fall off the 22-year-old cliff, it's insane. We spend all this money.
You should explain what the 22-year-old cliff is.
So when they hit 22, they fall out of the structures that are available, mostly school-based. And at that point, as Ilene was saying, services just vanish. Often the kids end up in the basement if there is a basement, or worse if there's not. And it's just a fault of the kind of public policy debates, David, you and I have been involved in for years. That's ridiculous. just carry forward all the expenses that we have allayed and arrayed to forward. And that's the great mission now. How do we find lives for these folks who are yearning for the life Owen wants? He's like, he wants a life. And that's a big part of the discussion that's coming out of the film, because folks are seeing, well, now I'm seeing he has these compensatory strengths that I might not have noticed. How could that lead, if they're harnessed and nourished, to maybe a job, maybe something he's very good at, and the kind of support, social and otherwise, that allows him to do that? That's the great mission for now.
Ilene, is there a model for what you're looking to establish?
So we're looking to establish that model here in New York. We found examples of that model elsewhere in the country for adults with different developmental disabilities, and we're adapting it for autism. Ron made the point about all of the investment we made in so many of these young children, and then what happens? Where's that return, so to speak, on investment, which is a complete, full, and meaningful life in adulthood? Where do we see that? And we need to look at, and we will be building, hopefully starting within this year, a new program called Neighborhood Network of New York that will harness government funds that are available to people with developmental disabilities. And those funds will be spent on services to support them. They'll not be spent on the housing. The housing will be supported either by families or through other forms of funding, Social Security, some from a job. But the real issue, it's not the house. So many people think, oh, I need a house for a young adult with autism. That's not the hard part. The hard part are the supports and services that make where you live a meaningful, joyful place, and that provides you the support so that you can be independent. Independent adulthood doesn't mean without any support. It's not completely on your own. It's the support you need to be as independent as you're able to. There's a patchwork of benefits that are available. You can get a little for a job through Voc Rehab. You can get a little through developmental disability if you qualify. But how you put those things together, how you make them work to have the web and safety net of support that an adult needs who has a developmental disability is still very hard to figure out in the United States.
You've been reporting on public policy for a long time.
Yeah.
Do you find politicians give a damn about this issue?
Yes and no. I mean, privately they often will, but then they're like, how much does this cost? And what I say to them is how much does it cost to do nothing? The social costs, of course, become public, and then the cost of what to do and how that grows, they never factor it right. And what I say is that the autistic spectrum people I know with jobs are some of the best employees. They are appreciative. They're precise. If you can harness their muscles, their compensatory muscles, the employer's like, well, he's my best employee.
Is that the case? Does Owen have
Yes.
with his job? Is that working out well?
It's working out great. He's at the Regal Cinema. He works at Toys R Us. He does art. He teaches kids how to draw Disney. And they love him at Regal. They're like, he's our best guy. I'm like, well, of course, it's a temple of cinema. The kid is like the moviegoer. But the fact is that that's what people miss, is they miss the fact that though disability is still at the core of how we use these definitions publicly, there are features in which they're differently abled. And if you can find them, often they will shine in ways that get them something other than the oh me, oh my, poor me thing. And people find intrinsic value and enlightened self-interest. That's what we're looking for.
I want to ask about the importance here of siblings, not just as and it's a remarkable relationship. The best line in the movie is, well, it's maybe ice cream. Time for ice cream.
No doubt.
Enough with the sex talk. Let's get a big thing of ice cream. That was an enormous ice cream treaty there. That was a good reward for that. I want to know more about that relationship and its importance, because I think we all think about that. And also, when you're thinking about programs, where do siblings fit in? What's the importance? And also, what's the in a sense, the therapeutic role that siblings might play?
Walter's relationship is so fundamental to Owen and Owen's to Walter. Owen changes when the autism hits him, but of course the movie and the book are about how we change. And the relationship between Walter and Owen is one that goes in both directions. They change each other. And that's the life journey that will go long past us. And in some ways, the most important of the relationships are the sibling relationships. And I think that one of the great gifts of the movie is people really feel that. As you get to the middle point and Cornelia and I start to fade back, and it's really the two boys going forward, people say, oh, right. Now, what about those siblings? How can we support them? How can they support each other? How can we help them in a way be the best partners possible as each of the siblings change each other? And of course, you see Walter built compensatory muscles as well. And
how can NYCA how does NYCA think about that as part of the whole of what you're trying to do?
So
What we're trying.
what we're trying to do is to recognize that siblings are going to be in the life of the person with autism longer than anybody else. They are essential and fundamental. And if we provide the supports to those adults with autism, the siblings can be the extended family that they should be and not replace the parent. And so what we want to do is we want to see through Neighborhood Network of New York that we can develop these services and supports so young adults can live out in their community and have meaningful, productive things to do, whether it be a job or something else.
And what role does the sibling play in that?
The role that the sibling plays is one of a supported family member who stays integrally involved. So many of the programs that I've seen from decades ago, parents set up their adult with a developmental disability in a place to live, and it was as if the family disappeared. After that, that program became the caretaker. And we don't see it that way. We see that the program is a support so that we can enable the person with autism to maintain the existing family relationships that we all want to have. So that birthdays are celebrated and holidays are celebrated, and there's time where they can do things together. Now, the person with autism may need some support to reach out and do that. But that's what we should be giving them because those are important fundamental relationships for the rest of their life.
But what can people do who are mercifully free of this particular problem, but everybody, it's in my experience, has something in their lives? How do they can they think about their role in this?
Very simply, reach out. Be the community, include people with autism, invite that child to the birthday party. If it's a young adult and they have a skill, think of someone you know to help introduce them to the possibility of a job. If there's someone who's your neighbor, invite them to dinner or to the barbecue you may be having. Reach out. Create the sense of community that's so often lacking. Remember, autism, one of the essential components of autism is this social disorder. And so what do? We isolate them further by not including them. What they need is to be included even more than typically developing people because it's hard to find the bridges. So find those on-ramps, find the opportunities, reach out and include them.
And you've been involved in this subject for years and years. How are things getting better in any way in terms of research?
There are major advances in biology which have had very little practical benefit yet. So I think that that's frustrating. It's encouraging because we keep thinking there's going to be some breakthrough that's going to push us further, and it hasn't happened. But I think that it's there. We are gathering knowledge, and that knowledge may help somebody with Parkinson's before it helps somebody with autism. But I think
It's in terms of genetic research in particular.
In terms of genetics, in terms of the molecular bases of various things. And also, it's so not specific to autism. I mean, what we've realized is autism is many different things, and the things that contribute to autism are also probably things that contribute to other disorders if they happen perhaps at a different day of pregnancy or in combination of different genes that you've already got or different virus that you catch. So I think that behaviorally, I think things are better because I think we have a better understanding of what, again, there's a lot of differences, but what is going on in the mind of a person with autism. I think we also realize that we don't know completely. We'll never know completely. But I think the examples that were in the film with Marcia Marcia Garcia Winner, and just the notion of like how might Owen be thinking and how might not, and what can we do about that? And even on a level of a much simpler child or a tiny child, I think we're doing better. And then I think we also know that we need to involve families sooner. The sooner the better. And so this idea that even like when I was being trained that we're going to take your child off and we're going to do things 40 hours a week and they're going to turn into a different child is not, that's not where it is. What it is trying to figure out within a community, within a family, within a regular environment, modified to the degree necessary, how can we help this person develop?
I just want to say, we talk about research, and it's the cause and cure research. What's really disappointing is when you look at the amount of research that the federal government is spending on, the amount of money the federal government is spending on research relating to services and how people with autism are living today, it's abysmal. It is a tiny fraction of what they're spending on cause and cure. And I don't mean to suggest that cause and cure isn't important, but while we don't know what the cause and know what the cure is, there are so many people in this country, more than I think it's over 1.5% of the people in this country on the spectrum. We need to understand, so what interventions are really effective? Will it make a difference? A recent study came out, it made a huge difference if children with autism were working before they ever left school, were they embedded in a job. That has a much higher correlation to whether they end up with a job than if they, practice something alone in school. What else do we need to know? Is it inclusion in social groups? Will that make an enormous difference? We at NYCA believe it's about connectivity. It's about connecting them to other people with autism. Somebody in the audience stopped me here today and asked me for my card because they have a 13-year-old on the spectrum and they don't know many other families living in their same situation in life. We can change that. That's not so hard to do.
We could talk for quite a long time, but I'm reliably informed that all of you like to eat, and I want to get you to dinner. But before I do that, I want to thank all three of you for the remarkable work you've done and you do. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing this film with us tonight.
Thank you, David.